The Oscars have had their lowest rated show ever, but what does this mean for the Oscars going forward, and why exactly were the ratings so bad? Hey everyone, this is Kevin, your failed journalist. And yep, my favorite night of the year, aside from things like Christmas, my anniversary, things like that, is Oscar night. It's my Super Bowl. It is the time to come together to see what Hollywood deems is its best picture, best performances. Sometimes they get it right, oftentimes they get it wrong, but like any game that you watch, that's just par of the course. Now this year, the best picture winner was Nomadland, and so Nomadland gets to go on the shelf right after Parasite and before whatever happens to win next year. However, it does not appear a lot of people are watching the Oscars. In fact, headlines like these were very, very common. Oscar ratings plummet to record low, down 58% compared to last year. And if you want to see exactly what it looks like, this was us. This is from Awards Daily. 2021, 9.8 million people watched the Oscar. That's down from the 23.6 million that watched last year when Parasite won. That in and of itself a low for the Oscar. Now these are devastating numbers. These are numbers that if the trends continue, the Oscars become financially unattainable to do. You can't do the Oscars. No one's watching them. No one's making money off the Oscars, and it could go away. Now, do I think it would go away in the next 5 years if numbers continue like this? No, they'd probably try to keep it around till 100, and then they would, put like a capper on the whole thing. But the question begs, though, why were they so low? Now, here's the thing. I'm seeing a lot of videos from people I subscribe to who are almost giddy that the Oscars did so poorly. Basically, their argument is that woke Hollywood is finally destroying itself, that people are finally sick and tired of the liberal politics. They are tired of seeing wealthy elite actors go up and accept their awards and talk down to other people. But is that what's really going on with the Oscars? In my opinion, it's not the whole story, and while I'm not exactly going to show... Actually, this is going to be our main data point, this chart right here. This is going to be the main data point, and I'm going to pretty much highlight certain years and what they mean. Now, you might notice that some of these years are definitely higher than others, and there's a reason for that. For example, 2000, that was the year Gladiator won Best Picture. That was also the year movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon were nominated for Best Picture. A lot of people saw the movies, therefore a lot of people watched the Oscars. But then you get to 2003 and you see 33 million. Well, what movie won Best Picture that year? Well, it was $1 Million Baby. A very, very good movie, but not a lot of people watched it. And the follow-up movie that was next in line potentially to win Best Picture was The Aviator. There you go. But then you have 2004. What was up for Best Picture then? Brokeback Mountain. Crash won in a stunning upset, but it did win. Now what about 2010? Well, this was the year Avatar was up for Best Picture. It lost to The Hurt Locker, but it was up. So 2004, why was that? Oh, I'm sorry, folks. I'm getting this mixed up. 2004 was the year that Lord of the Rings was up for a Best Picture nominee. I keep forgetting, like, these years are the broadcast years, not the release years. So, there. Lord of the Rings. You can see a lot of people watch for Lord of the Rings. 2010, the previous year, Avatar came out. Therefore, Avatar was up for Best Picture. 2014. What won in 2014? Let me just look over there. Oh yeah. That was the year Gravity was nominated and won pretty much everything except Best Actress and Best Picture. So the first thing you have to keep in mind is people watch the Oscars when there are movies that they want to see, or that they care about, as I should say. This year, none of the Best Picture nominees were from movies that people, the general public, typically watched. I mean, Nomadland won, and it's a wonderful movie, but how many people actually saw it? I mean, it's been on Hulu for months. I don't know too many people who actually took the time to stream it. What else? There was the Trial of Chicago 7. There was Promising Young Woman, which in another year might have been a big hit, but because of COVID, and we will talk about COVID, it really wasn't. So, had something like Tenet been nominated for Best Picture, maybe the numbers would have been a little bit better because people did see Tenet. But Tenet was not deemed good enough to be nominated for Best Picture, and I mostly agree. So the first thing is, none of the movies nominated were pretty much box office hits. But then there's the other factor. They weren't big hits because of COVID. And COVID decimated the box office. It made it hard for people to go out and see a movie and recommend other people see it. You see, one of the things about streaming versus theaters is that you're much more likely to remember the movie and much more likely to recommend other people see a movie if it's in theaters. If it's at home, there's so much stuff to stream, and people are much more likely to recommend a TV show as opposed to a movie. So because this year, or last year I should say, was primarily because of streaming, well, not a lot of people got emotionally attached to the movies. They watched the movie, and yeah, they probably liked it. I mean, for example, I loved Mank. I really liked Mank, and a lot of people did, but because we didn't go out to see it in theaters, it wasn't a night out, it didn't lead to a conversation with friends right afterwards, Mank had no staying power, and that was the same thing with virtually all these movies. It should be noted that the movies in the end that ended up having the biggest chance of winning, your Nomad Land, your Judas and the Black Messiah, your The Father, these movies were the Minari, they were exclusively in theaters for the most part. I mean, they did have a premium video on demand thing, but people actually went out to theaters and saw them. Heck, they saw Nomadland in IMAX, so it had a chance to have a much bigger effect. But the thing is, with COVID, it took out the movie theater, so for the most part, people were not watching the movies this year. Therefore, of course, they were unlikely to see these movies, and therefore, they just didn't care. Now, another thing about COVID that should be mentioned is for movie fans, the Oscars are kind of like a sport, if you will. You have film festivals, you have front runners, you have movies that sneak up from behind and take the momentum out of a front runner. It's like a race at the Olympics. There's certain things that happen throughout the year. People pay attention to what premieres at the Cannes Film Festival, what premieres at TIFF, what critic is behind this movie, how much box office does this movie make, and will that affect the outcome? In this year, none of those things happened. None of those things happened. So there was nothing to actually watch and witness when it came to the Oscar race. This is probably the first Oscars I can think of, and for some reason my printer turned on. I'm sorry, folks. But this is the first Oscars I can think of in which basically everyone was just left to guess at what would and wouldn't be nominated. I mean, we had some good ideas, but we didn't have anything to gauge it by. We couldn't see people react to the movies at the film festivals. We couldn't see the box office play out and see the public have a voice in the competition. There was just no room to even read, and therefore people aren't talking about the Oscars throughout the year. Therefore, when the nominations come out and when the awards happen, no one is emotionally invested in this particular sport. The only way I can think of is, can you imagine watching a Super Bowl and not having a season to watch the players play the games? And let's just say one day it's just announced, hey, these two teams are going to be playing in the Super Bowl. I bet you interest would dwindle because it's like, okay, that's nice that they're there. It's nice that they're competing. But we didn't participate in the actual leading up to the Super Bowl. We didn't get to see the games. They were played behind closed doors. We just didn't see them. Therefore, we are not invested in the outcome of the Super Bowl because we did not participate in that particular sport. So that's what also happened. And then, if you want a third reason, it's because the Oscar shows were upfront not going to be about entertainment. I mean, it's also because of COVID. They had to severely scale back the red carpet, which, believe it or not, people do care about the red carpet. I don't care about the red carpet. I don't watch the red carpet. I use that time to do preemptive stuff at my Oscars party. But the people do like watching the red carpets and seeing the actors and actresses dress up in their fancy tuxes and dresses and jewelry, and hearing those little quips about, what are you wearing today and who's your guest. These things are not happening this year. And so but that's the kind of thing that everyday people like. The pre-Oscar show actually tends to do much better in terms of interest than the actual Oscars, but a lot of those audience members end up being held over because now that you've spent an hour looking at the nominees, what they're dressed like, then it's kind of like, well, while I'm here, I might as well watch the Oscars and see if they win. But the red carpet show was absent. They did have the performances of the songs before the Oscars, but the song performances themselves, not in the show. The show itself was hostless, jokeless, showless. I mean, once you take those things away, the Oscars can be pretty bland, which is why I actually argue when people say they should just not perform the songs at the Oscars, and they have reasons for saying what they say. It'll make the show 25 minutes shorter. I don't know why you're giving so much attention to the songs, but the bottom line is the songs can be entertaining. Oscar song performances are memorable, but you don't have those at this because of COVID. So I think people knowing that going in were just like, I'm not going to watch this. I know this is not going to be a good show. Now let's go back to the chart and also point out another thing, and this is just a problem with live events in general. You'll notice particularly in the since 2017, things have really, for the most part, been taking a downturn. Now, why would they be taking a general downturn overall? And I think it's pretty simple. I think it's because streaming really came into its own in the last 5 years. Yeah, it's been around since 2010. We've had Netflix for a long time, all that jazz. However, I want to argue that cord cutting is a relatively new thing. In the last 5 years, cord cutting has been the thing to do. My dad no longer has his DirecTV after having it for 20 plus years. I myself, I moved out in 2009. I have never had a cable package, and I watched the Oscars on YouTube TV. But the thing is, that's the thing. Live events are kind of becoming a thing of the past, and these award shows need to figure out a suitable streaming option for the people who just simply don't watch live TV anymore. They don't get ABC anymore. They don't get Fox anymore. So they don't watch the live events. And it's just a general trend. At one point, I think Peacock showed what the future is going to look like with the Grammys this year when they did air the Grammys, but on Peacock, you could stream the Grammys live, and after the show had aired, you could watch it on demand whenever you wanted. That is probably the future of the Oscars. They need to figure out a way to do it. Maybe Disney Plus does it, seeing as how Disney owns ABC, and they basically own the Oscars. They at least own the Best Animated Feature category. So maybe in the future, live plus Disney Plus or Hulu or something like that. That's going to be the future, but people just aren't watching live events anymore anyway, because why set up, unless you're doing a party, why would you limit yourself to a specific time? You have to watch the commercials. No, for most people, they will just stream the thing afterwards. But with the Oscars, there's really no easy way to do that. So, now I do want to also add one more thing, because even though, again, I don't think this is the main thing, I do not believe for 1 second that this is the only reason. I've heard some people say that, this was the year that people figured out they do not need Hollywood. That is not true. The box office is recovering nicely. People do like Hollywood product. They were deprived of it, and we're starting to see them come back to Hollywood. We're seeing them come back to the movie theater. So I do not believe it is because people do not need Hollywood anymore. However, it should be noted that I do believe that wokeness did probably play a role in it. And here's the thing. The Oscars have always been political to a certain extent. People have always been making political statements. But the thing is, I think they just need to officially make this a policy, if you will. Don't talk politics at the awards, because people are just getting very upset about it, and they've had enough. Like, they do look. Ricky Gervais, when he did the Golden Globes a couple of years ago, and he roasted everyone in the room for their hypocrisy. It was one of the greatest and most memorable hosting jobs ever. Hire Ricky Gervais. Hire someone who will basically say, hey, we need to make this fun again. We need to poke fun of ourselves. We got to stop being so serious. We got to stop telling people how they should and shouldn't feel, because you can't convince anyone anything. In fact, the Academy Awards this year opened with Regina King basically celebrating the conviction of Devin Chauvin, who killed George Floyd. Now, full disclosure, I totally believe that Devin Chauvin was guilty of manslaughter. I believe he deserves to go to jail for a very, very long time. He abused his power as a police officer, and he violated his duty to serve and protect. George Floyd could go to jail, but he did not need to be killed over a counterfeit $20 bill. That said, a lot of people disagree. I don't know why they disagree. I mean, that some people have their reasons. I don't see it that way, but some people disagree. And when the very first thing of the awards is you are turning off the millions of people who feel that way, and they did do some live number countings, and apparently there were more than 10 million people who were watching the Oscars, and then when this one statement against Chauvin was said, people started turning off the TVs. You know what? The politics just need to go. They just need to go. Go. Nobody cares. You can't convince anyone anyway. Make it about the art. Make it about the entertainment. People, like sports, watch the movies to get away from the real world problems. And the thing is, I mean, it's kind of a relatively new thing for sports to be doing this, but this has been going on with the Oscars for a long time, but people are finally fed up with it. They absolutely are fed up with it. Is it the main reason? No. The main reason people did not watch the Oscars is because there were no movies that they were invested in, and for the movie, even the movie buff people, there was no race to follow. So the Oscars was kind of like having a Super Bowl without anything leading up to it. Now, there is one thing I'm going to end on. Movie theaters are actually ecstatic that the Oscar ratings were low. And now, why would they be feeling ecstatic? Well, because here's the thing. This is kind of like the cherry on top of the sundae that proves that direct-to-consumer didn't work. I mean, all these movie studios decided, hey, we're going to build our own streaming services. We're going to start giving the movies away for free. We're going to go direct-to-consumer. And this is the future. We don't need the movie theaters. But after a year, all they did was blow hundreds of millions of dollars, and they didn't actually make money doing it. And now we have something interesting. In an Oscar race where Netflix was the big winner because they were distributing most of the movies, people were not watching the movies enough to care. They did not care, and this even should have been a situation where, hey, maybe because most, if not all, the movies are streaming, they're more accessible than ever before. People can watch them, they can stream them, and then they can watch the Oscars and be invested. That did not happen. Direct-to-consumer has been a complete failure this past year. I knew it was going to be a failure. A lot of analysts felt it would be a failure. The only people who did not seem to realize that direct-to-consumer does not work under the current business model are the people who biasly have an old business model to protect. And, well, no, it's not that. Those people knew that this was a failure too. The only people who didn't know were the companies themselves and the shareholders. For the shareholders, oh, well, maybe we can get like 2 billion people to pay $10 a month. And it's like, yeah, but then what? Then what? How do you quantify success? How do you make money? Direct-to-consumer does not work this way. It might work for television, but for movies, movie theaters reign king. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the ratings of the Oscars. It was always going to be bad. I think this is just basically going to be a bad memory. That said, if the Oscars do not improve significantly the following year, they will need to look at the show, and I think they just need to get the politics out of it. They need to get the politics out of it. They need to make the show about the movies again. In fact, this Oscars did do at least one thing right that I think they should do going forward. They premiered trailers for upcoming movies In the Heights and West Side Story. Why this wasn't a thing before, I don't know, but it makes sense. Hey, not only do you make the Oscars about the awards, you premiere Super Bowl style previews for upcoming movies, like the upcoming Marvel movies, things like that. You make it an event that people want to see. But we'll see what happens going forward. Anyway, I would like to know, what do you think about the Oscars? Did you watch them? Did you enjoy them? Did you not enjoy them? And what do you think of that crazy way that they didn't do Best Picture last? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.